Welcome to Still Speak Podcast. This is the nightly update on the Gabby Petito case and what unfolded throughout the day that's worthy of discussing. If you missed it, I posted an hour-long video this morning. Midday today, I made an updated timeline video. So the day started out with law enforcement returning to Carlton Reserve once again to search for Brian Laundrie on the Venice side of the reserve. There was nothing found that we know of, but they definitely did not find Brian Laundrie. I think we need to stop assuming that they're searching this area solely off what the parents have said, because this was day 5 of searching this reserve, and they're using every resource possible, and they even got the governor of Florida involved to help get more boots on the ground to find him. And they must know more or have more, whether they found something in the home or they're looking for something that was not in the van, was not in the home, and was not in the Mustang, and they for some reason believe it's in this reserve, or they found a scent or a footprint or something. They have to have something. There's a ton of money and resources that they're spending to be wasting it and going off just the parents' word, who clearly have not been cooperative this entire time. So let's give law enforcement a bit more credit. For them to ask Governor Ron DeSantis for help, they had to show why they needed help and why they believe something or someone of importance may be in that reserve. So we just got to wait and see. I don't think we should just keep saying that they're wasting their time and he's not out there and this is all a big, decoy. I think they have more. It just doesn't make sense to me that they'd be going off just the parents. I think maybe on day 1, it was just off what the parents said. But at this point, there's got to be something. Even if he was there at some point, and maybe they think that he left behind evidence, like he went there to dispose of evidence and then proceeded somewhere. Who knows? This morning, his parents left their home in their pickup truck, and they returned a short time later with the Mustang that's believed to be Brian's. This Mustang was towed away after the home search and was taken into custody. It seems they finished up with the car, and so now they released it back to the parents. And after they got home with the Mustang, they left again with a police escort following them. Later, their lawyer was asked where they went, and he said they went to Orlando for quote-unquote business and were already on their way back to Northport. And just as an FYI, it's roughly 2.5 hours from Northport to Orlando. In Orlando, traffic, if you've never been, could be absolutely insane because of Disney, which is off of a major highway. And business does not necessarily mean something to do with work or their actual business. People use, I have some business to take care of. It's just kind of a word that's used. It can even mean like I'm going to run errands. I got business to do, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be work related. And so many people were like, no, they went to Orlando to do business. They didn't go and meet with a lawyer. Business just means business. A meeting, talking to an advisor, a lawyer, something, right? It doesn't have to be work related. So anyways, and rumors started to, of course, immediately unfold that they were seen outside a criminal defense lawyer's office. And then it was rumored that they were at the Jose Baez's office in downtown Orlando. And I won't lie, before this rumor started, when I saw they went to Orlando, my brain immediately went to the thought of, oh God, Jose Baez is in Orlando. And I was like, don't even freaking tell me that they're about to hire Jose Baez. I was ready to seriously flip a lid, because if you don't know who Jose Baez is, he is or was Casey Anthony's lawyer. And we all know Casey Anthony is free. So there's that. Enough said. A little while later, the lawyer then told one reporter that the parents met with a lawyer, but then he told another reporter they met with him. So there's 3 different answers to 3 different reporters, conflicting stories. I don't know why. It's really strange. I mean, why not just say that to begin with? If it's true, why didn't you just say from the beginning, they're coming to meet with me? Why did you wait and say that later? It doesn't make much sense. And he's in New York, which means that, you flew to Orlando instead of closer to their area, and you made them leave the house in the middle of all this chaos and get police escort, etc., to go to Orlando to meet with you? That doesn't really make much sense to me. It doesn't. I'm not sure that I actually believe that they met with him today in Orlando. And it made me think about his canceled press conference. And that took place, it was supposed to happen on Tuesday. He announced this press conference on Monday after they executed the search at the home. He then said that after speaking with the FBI, he was canceling it. He was later asked why he canceled it, and he said that it was not in the best interest of his client after speaking with the FBI. So I think about that, and then I think about this claim that they met with him in Orlando instead of him going to them, and I don't know. It's not really adding up to me. It's really not making a whole lot of sense. I mean, they could have met with him. I just don't see why you wouldn't have just said that instead of, they're going to do business. They went to a lawyer. No, never mind. They were with me. What? Okay, that's just weird. And I do think there's a high chance they were meeting with a criminal lawyer who is Florida-based. That's just my personal opinion, because things are starting to ramp up here. And they might be looking to have a criminal defense lawyer that is local. And I say that because their current lawyer not only is in New York, but he doesn't actually have a whole lot of criminal type experience in his firm or his experience as a lawyer. And so that makes more sense to me, like that they would consider another option or somebody who's more experienced to handle such a high profile case like this, but maybe just not necessarily Jose Baez, because then we find out shortly after this, when the rumors started circulating, that he's not representing them. And how do we know this? Well, Jose Baez shared a headline on TMZ that said Jose Baez is not representing the Laundrie family or Brian Laundrie. Okay, he shared that. So I think that was his way of saying, no, I'm not. Stop the rumors. And this is not the first time that's happened to him. A lot of high-profile cases, people assume families are going to hire him, and it starts circulating, and then he has to kind of, debunk the rumor and be like, no, not me. And so, anyways, they were pictured, the family, at the Orlando Main Library in downtown Orlando, and allegedly they had undercover agents that were watching them and were in the library with them. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what witnesses say they saw at the Orlando Library. So around 5 p.m., it was said that another law firm in the Tampa area is offering a $20,000 reward for anybody who knows the whereabouts for Brian Laundrie, or if there's anybody out there who has a tip that leads to his whereabouts. And this is on top of another firm who's offering $5,000. At 5:40 p.m., FBI Denver made a tweet that said, on September 22nd, 2021, the U.S. District Court of Wyoming issued a federal arrest warrant for Brian Christopher Laundrie, pursuant to a federal grand jury indictment related to Mr. Laundrie's activities following the death of Gabrielle Petito. As you see, this date was the 22nd. Today's the 23rd. So it sounds like this grand jury came to this conclusion yesterday, but we were just hearing about it, okay? And it said, quote, while this warrant allows law enforcement to arrest Mr. Laundrie, the FBI and our partners across the country continue to investigate the facts and circumstances of Miss Petito's homicide, unquote. And to that I say, see, what they're basically saying there is like, don't worry, this isn't just all we have on him. This is just one part of it. We're still investigating. We're still looking at the circumstances, and we're still examining her case as a homicide. Basically, I'll sum it up as, don't despair. Hold on. There'll be more, possibly. So that was that. And the warrant alleges that Brian committed debit card fraud between August 30th, 2021 and September 1st, 2021. A reporter reached out to Steve Bertolino, and he replied, basically, I understand that the arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie is related to activities occurring after the death of Gabby Petito and is not related to her actual demise, unquote. Well, unless a credit card killed her, I think it goes without saying that it doesn't play a role in her demise. However, I think this does connect, right? Because she was dead out there. He came back at some point, and in between this time, whether he left her alive or dead, he's using a credit card. But he's not going to say that because he's saying, technically this doesn't have to do with her death. Okay, fine. I'll give it to you, Steve. Whatever you want. But they do this, right? So they want to arrest Brian, and they have to do it legally. And they do this often in cases they charge them with something else, okay? I can think of at least 10 cases I've seen this in. And then they can detain them, have them in custody. Once they're in custody, they can try to interrogate. Doesn't mean he has to speak, but they can attempt to, and they can also use it as leverage or to bargain with him with. Like, if you tell us this, or you do this, we'll drop this charge, So this is not uncommon. And a lot of people are saying, well, they must not have enough to charge him with murder. And so people were getting upset about this. Well, here's the thing. I think this actually proves that they're really working diligently to get to that point if he's the one responsible for her death. This proves that they're really desperate to get him into custody, to do things legally, and that they were able to track down that he used a credit card in his travels at some point, which is huge, right? And so I like to look at this as a good thing, and it's a good sign because they are doing the best they can, and information that they're trying to get from like forensic and DNA and digital, all that stuff takes time. So in the meantime, they're going with this as a way to detain him, and as they're building their case for more charges, if he's the one responsible, then that's good. So we can get him on this, and then let them continue building their investigation so that they have a strong case, which some DA's offices and what have you sometimes don't have a strong case, right? So we want to be sure that they're doing their work that they need, and we don't want this rushed. We don't want him arrested and charged with the murder based upon little amount of evidence. We want them to have a good, strong case, so let us give them time, be patient, and just wait. But this warrant is a good first step, in my opinion, and it shows a really good sign that they're working really hard on this. But, let's go over this for a second, okay? So, dude, meaning Brian, is with Gabby for 7 weeks. Brian leaves, right? He heads back to Northport, leaving his girlfriend behind, dead or alive. He gets back. He doesn't tell anybody. He possibly went camping. He doesn't respond to her parents. He contacts a lawyer before police even come to his door. He refused to help in the search for her, not even to give them a general idea of where he left her or where he last saw her. And her body ends up not far from a location where the van was caught on video parked on the side of a road, okay? And then he's now using a credit card that wasn't his, going all over the place, using it, and it may or may not be Gabby's, and we're going to get to that in a minute. This is all connected. No matter what Steve wants to say, this is connected. It's a part of the timeline now. This is now a fact. It's a fact that he was using somebody else's credit card after leaving Gabby, dead or alive, somewhere, okay? Or the last time he saw her. So this all connects now into the timeline. So when I update the timeline now, we can put in that he was using this credit card on August 30th, 31st, or the 1st, or all those days, or 2 out of 3 of those days, because that's the time frame they gave. Now let's say that the cards are hers. I mean, are we really going to try to say that it's not in relation to her death? Because of course it is. That means that you were using her cards after she was dead. So yeah, it's related, right? I mean, you can't charge him with murder because he was using her bank cards. No. But it can definitely show even more so that he's connected to her death, right? Because why would you be taking her cards if you left her behind alive? Right? It's kind of a reach. And I get why he's saying it like that, and he has to, but I mean, come on. A spade is a spade is a spade is a spade. Really? Stop it. So if they were Gabby's cards, you can add it to the list of things that Brian needs to explain. And that list of things he needs to explain is becoming really, really long. While it is certainly just another piece that is suspicious, a defense lawyer could pull an act of, well, he didn't know she was dead when he used it. She gave him the cards, when they were on the trip. And, who's to say that he knew that she was dead when he was using them? I'm not saying I believe that. I'm saying that that's what the defense lawyer can argue as doubt in a courtroom. This is what they do. This is their job, to poke holes and leave that doubt lingering in the air in the jury's minds. And the release mentioned that this was after Gabby's death. And people took this as it meant it was her cards. Technically, nowhere does it actually say it was her cards. I took them mentioning her name as a way to clarify these charges do not have to do with Gabby's death, but are related to Brian's activities after her demise. And they're basically jumping the gun, it seems, before people assume anything, to say, hey, look, this isn't connected to the homicide, at least not yet anyways. Now, I'm going to read the warrant out loud, and then I'm going to discuss it with you a little bit. So it says, from on or about August 30th, 2021 through and including on or about September 1st, 2021 in the District of Wyoming and elsewhere, the defendant Brian Christopher Laundrie knowingly and with intent to defraud used one or more unauthorized access devices, namely a Capital One bank debit card ending in 8774 and a personal identification number for Capital One bank accounts ending in 0525 and 8665. And by such conduct, obtain things of value aggregating to $1,000 or more during that period which affected interstate commerce. So, okay. Okay. So, everybody's going bananas over this, and they're trying to figure out what it means and what it's about, etc. Okay. So there's 31 days in August, and we know that Brian had to leave the Grand Teton general area by the evening of the 30th to make it back to Florida when he did at 10:26 a.m. on September 1st. I am not totally sure that she was killed on the 27th or the 28th. It could be. But in my personal opinion, I don't think that she was killed like on the 27th and that he like hung around the area of her body for 2 days. Like, that doesn't add up to me. Usually you want to get as far away as possible, right? And I'm thinking he more likely left the area in the van rather quickly, and after leaving her where she was eventually found. And maybe he traveled elsewhere, even if it was 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours away, and then stopped to collect himself. And then at some point later, he proceeded to Florida. But that's just my personal opinion. I don't envision a scenario where he like puts her body out there and he's like hanging out in the van in the same area for an extended period of time of like 2 days. I think he left the area and then left completely to go back to Florida, just to make that clear. But even if he did, let's play with those dates. We know he got back on the 1st, and we know that all days start at midnight. And he got back at 10:26 a.m. So that's 10 hours that he could have used this card on the 1st, from midnight until 10:30 when he got back. Okay, 10 and a half hours, sorry. So, no, cops didn't lie when they said the van returned at 10:26 a.m. because they saw him on traffic cameras. Many people are like, oh my gosh, does this mean that the cops lied about that? No. It just means that he could have used it between midnight and 10 a.m. that morning on the 1st. They have him on camera. They're not going to say they have him on camera coming back with the van at 10:26 a.m. if that wasn't true. And so if he used these cards on the 30th and the 31st, and possibly from midnight to when he arrived home 10 hours later, we're going to go on that concept. It's a long trip, so many stops would happen along the way. It does mention the PIN number being used, which means he stopped at either an ATM or got cash back with a debit card, likely to get cash so they couldn't trail him. If he's even smart enough to think of that, which regardless, he still ended up caught. So, and this is saying that it's over $1,000. A trip like that for gas would run you a couple $100. Prices right now are high in some areas. It is a van and it is a 35 to 36 hour drive. I'm not quite sure that it'd be $1,000, but it'd be quite a bit of money. I can't really think of anything else that he could have purchased. Like, I just don't see him stopping and buying a TV. Maybe he stopped at a hotel and he stayed a night or two on his way back, which is a possibility, right? Although that wouldn't be smart, and getting cash is smart. But hotels usually have cameras depending on where you stay. So I don't know, but I would say that him staying at a hotel is a possibility because, depending on where you stay, hotels can run you from, let's say $75 a night to $200 a night, depending. And it says Wyoming and elsewhere. So it does sound like this happened in more than one state. And Wyoming is large, so Grand Teton National Park obviously does not take up the entire state. So even if he used the cards on the 30th, it doesn't mean that he used them close to Grand Teton, but he possibly used them in somewhere in Wyoming. Maybe. Which, in my theory, if he did leave Grand Teton immediately and he holed up somewhere for a day away from the park, possibly it was just somewhere else in Wyoming. And people are now immediately mentioning the hitchhiking story and saying that this now proves that that's true, because apparently this lady alleged that Brian offered her $200 cash. The issue here is her story supposedly happened on the 29th. If he didn't use the card until the 30th, well, then there's that, right? Because he didn't even use the card yet to get the cash. And now there's also rumblings that the FBI was in Benton, Illinois, getting surveillance cameras from a gas station. And I looked up this area to see if it would be en route back to Florida, and it definitely could be a place that Brian stopped. It's very, very close to the route that he most likely took. And I'm not saying it's true, I'm just saying that it's possible he did stop in this area of Illinois. From Grand Teton to Benton, Illinois, though, if we're going off of that, is 20 hours. And this road trip would have been about 35, 36 hours. So if he used the card there on the 1st after midnight, that's not really possible because he got back 10 hours later, which the remaining amount of time he would have from that area would be about 15 or 16 hours. So that's not possible that he used this card in this Illinois area if that's true on the 1st, which means that he would have had to use it on either the 30th or the 31st, which means that he left Wyoming roughly 6 p.m. or shortly after 6 p.m. on the 30th. If he used it on the 30th in Illinois, then that means he left the Wyoming area on the 29th because he's got to drive that 20 hours before he ends up being spotted allegedly in Illinois. And I hope that makes sense because you have to factor in that 20 hours. So this actually, if he was in Benton, Illinois, would actually help us figure out what day he actually left Wyoming. Was it the 29th? Was it the 30th? Or was it, well, it had to be the 30th at minimum because this is 35 to 36. So was it the 29th or was it the 30th that he actually left the state of Wyoming? And I think we're all automatically assuming these are Gabby's debit cards. Now, it could be, there's a slight possibility that it's not, okay? Hear me out. I actually do think they're probably hers. I'm just going to give another possibility here, okay? What it says is that he used a Capital One bank debit card. It gives the last 4 digits of that card. And then it says, and he also used the PIN number, and that this Capital One was connected to 2 different bank accounts that ended in X number and X number, okay? So this could be checking and savings, right? She's 22. She might actually have a checking and savings, and both of them were on one debit card. What I am considering, though, is another possibility here, is that I know her parents would often send her money, and it actually made me wonder if somehow they're connected, their account is somehow connected to hers, or what have you, because it'd be easier to transfer money that way, especially when she's halfway across the country, okay? And let's say they are connected to these cards in some way. If he pulled out this money, they would have assumed that it was just Gabby at the time when they saw it. They wouldn't think it was Brian, right? Now, again, I do think it's Gabby's, but that's not confirmed. That is not on the actual warrant. That's not what it says. So we can only make that assumption. And some people are like, maybe it's his parents' cards because he would have the PIN to those possibly. I know my mom's PIN, so that is a possibility. But they hadn't really cooperated all this time and seem to have been standing behind Brian, at least to our knowledge. That being said, they did call the police to their home about him being missing, and they spoke with police then about Brian. And they also spoke to the FBI possibly during the home search because they were taken outside to the van only for a short time, and at some point they went back in the home and the FBI was still there for hours. And we don't even know if they spoke to the police at that point or the FBI at that point and told them what they knew. Nobody has said that they did this, so we can't say that they did or they didn't actually speak. So is it possible that these parents are like, all right, we're kind of done with his crap now because he's causing us a lot of shit. We're going to tell you that he used our card and we didn't allow him to. and he used it on this day. Did they kind of give him over so that the police can find him and arrest him? That's not out of the realm of possibility. I think that could be a possibility, right? Thing is why would he have those cards with him cross country? Maybe they gave him the card before he left in case of an emergency. Possible, right? Like, here, take these cards. This is the pin. But then again, it's saying that not authorized, right? So then it goes back to Gabby again. So it's most likely hers. But I'm just considering all these possibilities. Unless they're saying that they didn't give him authorization because they gave him the card, but they told him, you have to call us before you take money out. And he didn't. That would be unauthorized, right? But then again, they gave him the card, so that is authorized. So anyway, point being is it most likely is Gabby's card. So now you're going to have to explain, like I said earlier, how is it that this girl's dead in Grand Teton, Wyoming, and you're rocking her cards in other states on August 30th, 31st, and September 1st, right? Which then comes into play with the defense lawyer saying in court, well, he didn't know she was dead when he was using the card. He just happened to have it in his wallet and he used it. I mean, not many people are going to believe that, but he can argue that in a court of law. And I want to go back to Steve Bertolino's statement where he says that, this is an arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie is related to activities that occurred after her death and not related to her actual demise. People read that and they immediately thought, he just outed his client and this proves he knows that he killed her because he said that it occurred after her death. How does he know that she was dead when he was using these cards? Well, here's the thing. The van was spotted on the side of the road on the 27th, okay? And the FBI has announced that they are looking for any information from people who were in that area of Grand Teton between the 27th and the 30th. And this charge says the 30th through the 1st is when he used these cards, okay? So you can look at that and go, see, the FBI is making this connection. They think something happened either the 27th, the 28th, the 29th. He, hightails it out of the area. He's now using this credit card on the 30th, 31st, and the 1st, right? So based upon the FBI wanting information for those days, and of course he's going to say after her death. Although I do agree it is suspicious, right? Because why are you saying it was after her death? We haven't gotten the cause of death or the time of death, right? And typically the lawyer doesn't get the final report until much, much later, unless the FBI possibly shared this information with him if they had a time of death or what day she died, but I highly doubt it. I know it seems like this is suspicious, but I think it's just been being said that way because that's the time frame that FBI believes something happened to Gabby. It was between the 27th and the 30th. If they thought that it was any other days, then they would have been asking the public for the 26th, the 25th, the 31st, so the FBI has kind of picked a certain time span that they believe her death occurred. Now, of course, that's not confirmed officially because you have to wait for the autopsy results. So I think this was just another thing that people were looking a little bit too much into. This guy's a lawyer. He's not going to slip up in a text and out his client. Come on. These lawyers are, they're rather slick, okay? So, and now if we think about all this in the grand scheme of the whole entire story, right? You have this guy with his girlfriend. He leaves. He goes home. He has her van. Her mom's getting weird texts that don't appear to be Gabby. He's using a card to get home. He gets back with the van. He's caught on camera coming back into town, but nobody knows that until much later, and her parents are trying to contact him, and he's not answering the phone, and his parents aren't answering the phone, and then they send the police there, and they find out that not only is the van there, but so is Brian, and he already lawyered up just before she was even reported missing. And then 2-3 days later, he ends up fleeing and has been missing for now going on 10 days. And yet, there are many, many people still trying to give this dude the benefit of the doubt. And you know what? I have to appreciate it, because that's usually me. I'm usually the one who's saying, wait. All these other possibilities could have happened. But now it's like, okay, if this was Gabby's cards and he did kill her, okay, if he did, and he was now using her money and her van and possibly her phone, that's just gross. It's just so beyond gross to think about. Think about that. So, what were you doing, Brian? Huh, Brian? What were you up to? Because that's some crazy, gross stuff. Just saying. And what else we have to discuss? Yes. Fox News had somebody else on claiming that they also, gave Brian a ride hitchhiking. I don't believe the original hitchhiking story. I certainly don't believe a second hitchhiking story, because what's the chances that 2 different people picked up a hitchhiker? I didn't even know people still picked up hitchhikers. Is that even still a thing? I thought it was like a known common knowledge that you don't pick up some random stranger on the side of the road. Maybe it needs to become common sense again, because what the heck? So even if those are true, why are you picking up random strangers on the side of the road? And look, this one potentially killed his girlfriend. So it just proves that you're not supposed to be picking up a hitchhiker. Anyways, I'm not buying that it's another hitchhiker story, because I don't believe the other one. Here's my thought process. I think it's simple. I always tell myself the most simple and easiest answer is usually the right one. And I said it on here a couple of days ago. He had the van. He had transportation. There was no reason for him to hitchhike or call an Uber. There was no reason for that. He had a van to escape with. And at that time, he had no reason to think that her family would be looking for her or the van, right? He sent this text about Yellowstone, possibly, right? We have no service, buys him time. He gets in the van and he gets the hell out of Dodge and he gets back to Florida. Why hitchhike? This doesn't add up. So now he's leaving the site. He's leaving this van abandoned near her body, and he's hitchhiking all these miles to this other person who picks him up, and then she drives him allegedly 10 miles, and now he's 10 miles further from the van, and now he's got to hitchhike or walk all the way back 20 miles to the van, and then he's hitchhiking again at some point. But all along he had this van and could have just used this van to go home or go somewhere. It doesn't make sense to me, especially when you think about the fact that he fled, okay? And allegedly he took the Mustang to this reserve, and then he left that Mustang there and he took off, okay? So you're going to tell me that he didn't think about taking that van, leaving Wyoming, going to another state, possibly abandoning that van somewhere else, and then finding another way home, whether it was Greyhound or a rental car or even hitchhiking in another state. This idea that he was hitchhiking twice in Wyoming, it's just not... It's not adding up for me. It's just not. He had the van. He had it. He had it. There's no reason for that. So you just, boom, go. And like I said, if you want to abandon it someplace else away from the body, you wouldn't want to leave it by the body, because then that gives them a spot to look for Gabby's body. And of course, if you hid the body, you don't want the body found, so you're not going to leave a big piece of evidence like the van near the body. So this idea that he left this van for apparently 2 times for him to go hitchhiking, this van is sitting abandoned in this woods area next to her body? I'm sorry. I can't get on board with this theory. I just can't. I'm not buying it. And again, I want to remind you, just because somebody goes on the news and says, this is what I witnessed, doesn't mean that it's true. And I keep saying this, but I have to remind you, because it seems that there's a lot of people out there that that's not clicking in their brain, that doesn't mean that it's a fact. And I think it's also interesting now we're like 10 days into this, and now we're getting even more stories coming out of people claiming to have seen him. Really? I don't know. Something else big happened today. The Moab City Police Department is conducting a investigation into the August 12th incident between Brian and Gabby, which involved the police and officers over there in that area. Quote, the Moab City Police Department has clear standards for officer conduct during a possible domestic dispute, and our officers are trained to follow those standards and protocol. At this time, the city of Moab is unaware of any breach of police department policy during this incident. However, the city will conduct a formal investigation, and based on the results, will take any steps that may be appropriate, unquote. And if you recall, I was talking to you the other night, and I was upset because the 911 call was received where it was said that Brian was hitting and slapping Gabby. And then the next day, it came out in a written statement, and people were confused because they thought it was the same person as the 911 call. So there was a little bit of confusion. And when I started reading it, I came to the conclusion, I was like, you know what? I think this is two different witnesses. And the reason for that was because he mentions the one that wrote the statement, not the 911 call guy, but the person who wrote the statement at the end said that he knows that somebody else also called it in. So I think he was referencing the 911 caller that we heard the other day. So I came to that assumption. I didn't think much more of it. And then a reporter contacted the law enforcement in that area, and what he found out is that the 911 caller called Grand County Police or sheriffs. I'm not sure which it is out there. Some places call it police, some places call it sheriff. And the other one called Moab City one, okay? So, we heard Grand County. The statement person called the Moab. So, 2 911 calls went out to 2 different agencies, basically. And then they, responded to this call. So it makes this a little bit more complex because you had the 911 caller who called Grand County saying that Brian was hitting and slapping Gabby. And then you had this guy in a statement basically saying that it looked like they were fighting over a phone and that he got in the van and it looked like he was trying to leave her. And at one point he said that it looked like they were both hitting each other. And when I read the statements, I came to my personal conclusion that the 911 caller sounded like he saw the whole thing play out, from them arguing up and down the sidewalk and he was hitting and slapping her up and down the sidewalk to when they got into the van. And the way the statement was written by the other witness, it sounded more like he witnessed the part right before they got in the van only. So it looks like the 911 caller gives us a little bit more of what led up to them getting into the van, and the written statement gives us more of what happened right before and then when they got in the van. That's my personal opinion based upon how it was written and how the 911 caller described it. Regardless, they're investigating it because this is a bit complex since one called Grand County and the other one called Moab. So now they're going to have to figure out, did something go wrong here? Was there a misstep? Was there a miscommunication? Did somebody not share with the officer in the field that one of the 911 callers said that he was hitting and slapping her? They're also going to go over the full body cam footage and see if there's any point in time that the officers misunderstood the situation or misinterpreted it, or if they could have done something differently. Now, I don't think there will be criminal charges against the officers after they do this, because I don't think they did anything was a breach of protocol. I think what may come of it is how law enforcement may start handling disputes like this, the domestic incidences. And there may be changes due to this story. That actually happens often. So that's a possibility. I'm not really sure they did anything legally wrong or against what their oath is to do. But hey, I don't know. They're investigating it, and we're going to find out if there was any issue there or not. I really don't want to blame these officers in relation to her death. Meaning, I don't want to be well, see, if you would have done things differently, she wouldn't be dead. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is, that I feel that situation was handled the best that they could be. However, I think that there was things that were overlooked. And the only person to blame here is the person who actually killed Gabby. And again, we don't even know yet if it was Brian, even though most of us think that it was. So even if that's the case, people are oh, they're to blame for why she's dead. Well, we don't really know that because we don't know if it's Brian that's the one that killed her. It's so complex. I hope you're following me. And sometimes when I start talking out loud like this, I'm trying to process my thoughts in my brain, and then it comes out, and then it's all right, did that make sense? I hope it did. And so we'll see. I'm glad they opened an investigation. Even if it comes to be that they did everything right, then so be it. The only person responsible for Gabby being dead is the person who killed her. Because even if they had looked at that and said that Gabby was the victim and still separated them for the night like they had, it doesn't mean that would have prevented her from being killed later, because she could have went back with him and so on and so forth, right? So it's a bit complex. It's a very complex situation. Another thing that happened today was Gabby's friend, Rose, allegedly her best friend, spoke out yet again. She spoke out once before and had said that, Brian was really controlling, etc. Well, in light of him being missing, she is now speaking out saying that Brian actually can survive 4 months because he did such in the Appalachians, apparently by himself, for 3 months. And she claims that Gabby and Brian both told her stories about the time that he did this. So that, if it's true, is really fascinating, because I was kind of thinking, this dude, I don't think he's smart enough to survive out there. If he went up to the mountains or something. I just didn't think so. Because, they went on this cross-country trip, but they were in a van that was, completely souped up. And it wasn't just a backpack and go live out in the woods, or the mountains. If what she's saying is true, she wouldn't technically know that he actually did do this, because she met them after Gabby moved to Florida. But they may have told her. So if it's true, it's a bit concerning, right? Because, again, he got a 4-day start before his parents told the police he was missing. And then he got a day off on Monday. So he had 5 days to make it as far away as he could to wherever he's going. And if he's going to the mountains, he's probably in the mountains. Unless, of course, the police are not looking for evidence in the Carlton Reserve. They're looking for... They are not looking for Brian in Carlton Reserve. They're looking for evidence, which is possible. It's possible that they're out there because something out there is going to lead them where Brian is. Doesn't necessarily mean that they actually do believe he's in that particular area. So now we just have to wait and see. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I want to discuss with you. I don't believe so at this time. If I forgot anything, of importance. I will definitely add it to tomorrow's video. And on that note, I'll see you soon.